Hello, it's well, no,
Maciek.
Hello,
Your
my name is Maciek.
Let's start again.
Hello, my name is Maciek.
Hi, I'm Alessio.
We are part of the Project S.A.M team at MediaShake.
And we're here to talk about a workflow process today.
Especially art,
Yeah,
and how we go about creating our art assets for the game. We mostly use sketchbook and make some really scrappy drawings and figure out our designs as quickly as possible. It allows us to quickly move through designs and make sure all the art assets fit what we want. I don't know where I'm going with this.
I don't know where you were going with it either.
The sketchbooks allow us to quickly get designs down and through iterative process keep reworking the designs and making sure the designs fit into the other art assets that we already have.
Yeah, I mean, it's just sketchbook is just the easiest way to start with an idea. So
it also allows us to quickly move on to actually creating the asset.
Yeah.
And because with sketches we can get the general shapes and ideas of how we want the thing to look like, but we can't see the colors.
Yeah.
And with pixel art you're so limited to how much you can do. It's
colors
best to quickly move into that, but we still need some idea of what we actually want from the designs.
But shape is the most important thing in pixel art, so
yes,
knowing that from the sketchbook is probably the best.
Shape and colors, because colors will be are the biggest factor when you think how to make it stand out from the environment. Because if everything is low fidelity, you have to make sure that enemies especially stand out, because that's what the player will be looking at the most, apart from the player itself.
I mean, from a programmer point of view, as part of the doer, this is also really good because it visualizes it for me. At least when we talk about the idea of the enemy, I can see it gameplay wise, but I can't usually see it visually. So when you propose me the sketches you do, that's the first time.
It's usually the biggest selling point.
Yeah. For me, that's when I go, okay, now I fully visualize. Like now I can see it happening, or now I can see it happening, but there's a little tweak. So it's constant backwards and forward of feedback from gameplay ideas to visual ideas, and I think that reaches extreme level when we first start implementing it.
Yeah, most of the time we also figure out all the attacks, which we keep separate from the main body of the enemies, just to save time on the creation process.
And yeah, because I mean,
and they don't really look that different from if they were one sprite.
I mean, the main thing, I think we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but because once we go from the sketchbook idea and we've talked about it and made sure that we're happy with it, then you start creating the base pixel art for it, for me to test. Make sure at least the colors, make sure that they're in tone with the rest.
First I create a basic all the sides shot of all the views that the the enemy would have to face. Depending on enemies, they would have different amount of facing directions, and each direction has to be animated. Each sprite direction would have its own walking, its own attack, its own.
Because it's the main thing with 2D that I think people that do it obviously realize, and it's one of the most obvious things. But people that don't do it, we don't have rotation in 2D. With a model, you can just make it and then you rotate it.
Every single side.
But yeah, so when where we have a top-down slanted view, when something rotates, it's not just a top-down rotation. We physically have to make you have to make a 3/4 rotation in the drawing. So knowing how many direction the enemy in this case has to go, and the minimum number of those that we can do helps us a lot. So for example, with a walking scorpion enemy, we'll have 4 or 8 direction, but with a flying enemy, we have only two directions, left and right.
It depends which fly.
Again, it depends.
We have a spawner enemy which will just spawn smaller enemies, which doesn't need to have. It doesn't have an attack of its own, so we don't have to make it face other direction because it will never try to attack a player.
And it doesn't have legs, which is the other big thing. So you don't have to animate the legs in different directions. It's just flying and bobbing around. So it makes it, The
only thing that is animated are the wings. But
basically, the workflow, one of the main things for a workflow is modularity and iteration. So modularity comes in this sense, so that we allow the workflow to work for us and not limit us. So rather than saying, all enemies are going to have full direction, we said, what system can we make that allows us to have various directions for various enemies and not break that system? And I think that's a very key part for the whole process. But
I think we also had a lot of learning to do with pixel art, since this is our first game that we actually did pixel art. But I think we figure out all the small things that we had to consider. We did look at the animations and how many views we need. We also looked at how we want to do the sprites and how we want to separate the attacks from the enemies to allow us more options for different attack patterns.
That's one of the things we figured out pretty early on, is that we did that for the player as well. That's the reason why we don't have arms on the player, is that we wanted to keep, again, the workload as little as possible, creating as most content as possible. So not having a complete sprite for the attack animation means that we could use the base direction animation of the enemy body and then overlay the attack on top of it.
We can also make sure that we can do charge up attacks on the main sprite, and then attack follows afterwards. So we can kind of make the part which is attacking disappear and make it appear in front of it.
And the other thing as well is, for example, with the spike of the scorpion, where it just comes down attacking the player, it allowed me, from the coding side of things, to just rotate that spike, so I don't have to worry about.
It
can face whatever direction.
Not only attack forward, but it can also attack
in any range of that attack. Because I can rotate.
Direction.
If I didn't have it separate, then you would have to make an animation
for
each single angle. So that's definitely saved us a lot of time. The other thing as well that we had issues with is lighting. So we came from 3D. We did a previous project was a 3D VR game with loads of bloom, loads of emission. So the lighting was kind of done for us. Whilst in 2D,
you kind of have to do everything yourself.
We tried to do normal maps, which is the way you would do a 3D model, but doing that just was...
It's very hard to do it in the view that we want the game at.
So the solution we had, which is probably one of the most time-saving things we ever thought about, is just to have one source of light. So there's no light in game apart from the player one, which makes everything a bit lighter around him, but there's one light source, which is the top left, and everything in the game, environment, enemies, no matter what, it has that rotation. It created a bit of issues because usually 2D games, when they go from right to left, they just flip the sprite.
So we had to create more sprites.
Yeah, so it gave us a little bit more work in that aspect.
But it looks better.
Yeah, some games don't worry. I actually noticed a lot of games don't even care, even if they do have one light source, they will still just flip the sprite.
Yeah.
And once I started noticing that, it's ruined so many games for me. It's like, the light is on the other side.
I think that's why game developers don't usually play other games.
It's one of those things that if it's there, it feels right and nobody will notice, but if it's not there, some people will, and it will be really annoying. But
It's small things that matter, but it's the unnoticeable things that just feel right.
The other thing as well is obviously going with the lighting is the shadows. We can't just... Shadows don't just appear, we have to physically make them.
Yeah. On the other topic, which is environment.
It's a bit different.
Which is completely separate design-wise when it comes to creating the assets, because we usually just go straight into the assets, because it doesn't make sense to do a lot of designs where it would probably take the same amount of time, and we can test it quicker, since we don't really have to worry about the environment doing anything other than look good.
Maybe an idle animation, but that usually comes after as well.
Yeah, if it's a tree, it will have like a swinging animation where the leaves are moving.
Yeah.
But that's pretty easy to do, and you can kind of see how it would look without doing the animation.
Yeah, the main thing for the... Like, we have that obviously in the enemies and the weapon design as well, but for the trees and environment design, the main problem is color. So we need to make sure that it fits with the environment, and to do that test, you just design them and sketch them and make them in pixel art, and then I take them and put them in. That's it basically for the environment process.
Yeah.
And then after that, if it goes well, then that's when we'll start thinking about
expanding
animation. And that will definitely pop out. All the little animations will definitely pop out when we have the sounds to go with them.
Yeah.
It's one of those small things that
just a little bit of sound makes a difference.
Yeah, and even the small animation, the idle background animation is I think it's what brings a game to life, especially with pixel art and 2D art, is those small movements that give it that illusion of life, basically.
That basically ends the art process side of things.
Then I get it, and the first thing I do is split up, because I get this massive sprite sheet, which is usually either for one enemy or multiple enemies. Elites and bosses usually have one for themselves or multiple, depending on how big
I think
it is.
Elite mostly that I can fit two.
Two in one? Okay.
And like single enemies, I can sometimes go up to 4 enemies on one sheet, something like that.
It depends, because obviously, as we were saying before, various enemies have more or less sprites, but yeah, the main thing is I cut it all up, make sure the pivot's in the right place, just some making sure that it's standardized with the rest of the workflow. So for example, the enemies have to have their pivot lower down, the weapons have to have their pivot in the center. I mean, small things like that.
Just tweaks.
Yeah, and then after that, which is the main part of the testing process, is the animations. So I grab these sprites and just make all the animations that Massix got ready for me. So then I can see if there's usually some roaming white pixels to be cleaned up.
No, that's where you go when the work needs to be done first.
Yeah, but apart from that, that's a small thing.
That's really easy to fix.
Sometimes it's actually looked good in some of the white ones looked alright. But the main thing is just making sure they look alright. If there's any changes to be made, then I can quickly tell Maciek. But at this point, the iterative process of the art side is kind of automated because of how Unity is set up. All those tweaks and changes I made at the beginning when I got that file, if you make changes, they automatically get applied to my animations.
So basically, I can always keep updating.
It's always up for updating, and that's a really good thing for maybe past enemies that we've done, or the player where
we want to kind of bring them up to the standards of the newer enemies.
Because we're always learning. So if we learn something new on the latest enemy, we want to make sure that we're quickly able to apply that to all the other ones.
Maybe even like redesign how certain things look based on how we did it later down the line.
Yeah, I think one of the main things that, again, doesn't stop us but kind of like slows us down is we can't move the position of things in the spreadsheet because Unity only saves the location.
We can definitely add on to it.
Yeah, but even then, if something does move, I can just edit that really quickly. So It takes a bit longer, but if we don't change the position, then it's fully automated. No, nothing. I just need to re-import the sprite. And after that, I basically take those animations, even if they're not finished, because as we said, we can change that later. And I've made my base system code for enemies. I'm not going to go into it, but the main things is that the animators are all the same, and they all have the same variables. And then what the code does, it grabs functions and methods and logic and then spits these numbers into the animator.
Yeah.
So whether the animator has 2 walking direction, 4 or 8 walking direction, because it's just intaking numbers that are always the same, the animator then knows what to do with them. There's usually just a little bit, maybe if there's some weird stuff, like for example for the spawner enemy, it'll have some bespoke code that goes to it. But most of the time when I'm writing the codes for the new enemy, it's just a matter of grabbing some functionality from the base group and putting it in the right place, and then that's for the simpler enemies, that's done. So that's pretty much it for the workflow. I'd say that yesterday I finished
procedural generation.
Got to an acceptable level of procedural generation.
Finally, been poking him the whole month to finish it.
Yeah, it's been a couple of months in the production line.
The works.
I mean, on and off.
It needed to be done this month, basically.
Until like I think until a couple of weeks ago, it was on and off. I had another week where it was full on. A couple of probably a month ago. But in between, I was doing so many other things. I was trying to get demos ready for shows. So trying to do that at the same time as creating this core system was just impossible. But now that we've got a bit more,
well, the system is almost fully complete.
Yeah. So now there's a couple of things to bug test. One of the main things that I'm worried about is overlapping rooms. So I don't have a system in place yet that makes sure that they're not fully overlapping. I'll have to go into that. But the main thing that I managed to solve is that where before, about a month ago, we had it ready, but it took 15 minutes to load for each level that it created. Not ideal for an indie game title.
Almost like Anthem level loading speed.
Yeah, oops. We got it down to less than a minute, half a minute. I'm gonna try and optimize it as much as I can, but unfortunately, where it's working with tile maps and Unity system, hopefully when I build it, I need to test it in build, because I'm testing it in engine at the moment. So the engine has a lot of background processes going on. Hopefully, doing it in demo in the build will be a bit shorter. But yeah, hopefully we'll have something to show you next week.
Yeah.
We won't be talking about it next week. We'll just be overviewing as we go along. Maybe talk about it in the future.
Maybe have some people play it and see how they do.
We'll probably be talking about player combat next week. So focusing not the coding side of things, but focusing on the design values. Why we decided to go in certain direction. What inspired us. What inspired us to make this game, basically? What's our process behind it? That's it for today. So hopefully you enjoyed it.
Thank you for watching,
and see you soon.
See you next time.
Bye bye.